Hey everybody, welcome back to Challenge the Call with Max and Avery. I'm your host, Max.
And I am Avery. How are you guys?
Alright, so we're coming at you with a special episode today. It's a playoff party, everybody. So we're going to talk college football playoffs and NFL playoffs a little bit. That'll be coming up soon. And we'll get right into it. So to kick us off, we're going to start with a little FCS action. That is the Football Championship subdivision. Avery, you want to start us off there?
South Dakota State. I mean, we saw it in the beginning of the year. They played yours truly, and they almost beat us 7-3. We ended up squeaking that out, but they're showing why they are the best team in FCS, and they are ranked number 1. They just blew out. Delaware in the first game of the playoffs. They blew out Delaware 42-6, and then Holy Cross 42-21. So, are they the Bama of FCS right now?
I think they're definitely the Bama of FCS. I mean, they're like this every year, aren't they? Like, they're at least in the playoffs just year to year to year.
I feel like it interchanges between like South Dakota State and North Dakota State. Something about the Dakotas.
Which North Dakota is also in there. So the two semifinal games that we got number 1 South Dakota State going against number 4 Montana State, and then at number 3 North Dakota State against number 7 UIW. And that's I love it's 1, 3, 4, and 7. Number 2 got knocked out, I think, by UIW in the quarterfinal round.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking at that. Sacramento State, UIW, and that was a thrilling game. 66-63. Are you kidding me?
I was slightly disappointed just because I got my master's at the University of Northern Colorado. They are in the Big Sky Conference, and Montana State and Sacramento State are also Big Sky Conference. So kind of how we talked about in our previous episode of, hey, support your conference in the playoffs and everything. I was really excited for Montana State and Sacramento State to both be in the FCS championship or playoff championship. And so I was a little disappointed when they got knocked out, especially being as high as number 2. But what are you going to do? I think, who do you think's going to win it? Who do you think's going to be in this championship game? And who do you think's coming out on top?
I think it'll be North Dakota State versus South Dakota State. I think it'll be a Dakota National Championship game. And you know what? I think the Bison will beat the Jackrabbits. So I think North Dakota State will pull it off. But going on to what you said about the Big Sky, I mean, I went to the University of Northern Iowa, UNI, for a year or two. And South Dakota State and North Dakota State are both in the Missouri Valley Conference. So I am kind of cheering for one of those two, North Dakota State or South Dakota State, because, you know, I still support the Panthers. Like, even if I don't go there, but I did go there for a portion of my college career. So, like, let's go Missouri Valley. Let's see it. So I guess we're on opposite ends of this playoff.
Overall in this, I'm still, I think, supporting South Dakota State. If anything, just so the game against Iowa at the very beginning of the season, you know, is kind of like, oh, Iowa barely beat an FCS school. Yeah, but it's also the best FCS school there is in the country. So.
Yep. The national champs.
Yeah.
And so that would feel great if you can say, all right, you know, we did beat a national champ, FCS. I mean, not the same level, but hey, you know, we did beat them. That would be awesome.
For sure. And to go back to what you said very early, something about the Dakotas, I think a big factor is just they don't have FBS schools.
Yep.
Or even pro team. It's kind of like how everyone always talks about in Iowa, the Hawkeyes are our pro team because we don't have an NFL team and stuff. So, like, our Cyclones and our Hawkeyes are our big, like, boom, there they are. Like, they mean everything to us. Well, for states like all three of these guys, the Dakotas, Montana, they don't have FBS schools in them. So these FCS schools, that's as big as it gets. So all those local, super talented kids that aren't looking to go out of state, that's where they end up. So I think that just kind of fits, like they just kind of happen to fall to those like, hey, I'm a homebody. I'm kind of trying to stay somewhat local. Here's the highest level I can go in my state. I'm going to go be a Bison.
Yeah. And, I firmly believe that these two teams they should not be FCS. And I really think that they should be FBS level. I mean, we saw James Madison last year take the step, and they were undefeated for a good portion of college football season this year at the FBS level. So, I think North Dakota State and South Dakota State, they would be a great FBS program. And I think they could probably fit maybe a transitional period in the MAC, maybe for a couple of years. But I could see North Dakota State, South Dakota State sometime in the near future being in the Big Ten, 10 years from now maybe.
Yeah, over a long time for sure. They're definitely not looking to jump Power 5 at all. But, I mean, we saw South Dakota State play Iowa. And, I mean, that's a Power 5 school right there. I'd say there's probably a handful of Power 5s out there that they would beat still. So it's not out of the question that they should be at a higher level. But, yeah, I know we'll definitely – we've talked about this before, and we'll have a future episode coming up. But we'll throw around some ideas regarding the placement of different football teams at different levels in Division I. But we'll save that for another time.
For sure. Now to the real conference.
Wait. So, first I'll just mention these games are both being played this weekend. I think one of them's actually happening tonight. One of them kicks off in 2 minutes. So, I forget which game it is. But one of these games kicks off in a couple minutes here. The other one will get played tomorrow. And then the championship game for the FCS is going to be on January 8th. So, I mean, if it's Dakota versus Dakota, maybe our episode coming up to that, we'll talk a little bit about that championship game again.
It is UIW playing
UIW.
UIW,
Okay.
we're playing North Dakota State. So,
All right. So, that'll kick off soon. I don't know if I'll watch this time. Just, I don't know if it'll be on, frankly, in this area, but
it will be on ESPN2. So it's on ESPN2. So we should
get that.
We should be
okay.
able to get that. Yeah.
Maybe I'll tune in.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see. I just football's football. It doesn't matter what conference. It doesn't matter if it's JUCO, FBS, FCS, D3.
When I was down in Arizona recruiting, while I was waiting in the airport, I think 4A or 5A championship game was being played, and I pulled it up on my phone and I watched the Arizona High School State Football Championship, and you know what? It was still real good. Sometimes you watch high school and you're kind of like, oh wow, high school's a little crazy, but at a certain level, a championship game in a big state like that, it's still entertaining as hell to just watch football.
For sure. And, you get to see the future, especially you get to see the future of college football, maybe the future of the NFL, and you get to see where they came from. So that's awesome. That's really cool.
But getting into the college football playoffs, FBS that is, obviously, we mentioned last time who's in it. We got number 1, Georgia, number 2, Michigan, who I keep accidentally saying Ohio State for because I am still just thinking of last year. Number 3, TCU, and number 4, Ohio State. So, the way this is going to break down is we got the Verbo Fiesta Bowl, and that's going to be Michigan versus TCU, and that is going to be played in Glendale, Arizona, on New Year's Eve at about 3 p.m. Who do you think's taking that one?
My heart says TCU. My head says Michigan. So I really want TCU to pull off the major upset. I think it would be incredible. I just seeing TCU first time ever in college football playoffs. And, you know, like we talked about supporting our conference, right? But I'm also supporting an Iowa guy playing quarterback, Max Duggan.
It's Max Duggan.
It's
you
Max.
Can't not root for Max Duggan.
Exactly. So, like, you know, a part of me is like, it's Michigan, Big Ten, and then it's like, oh, it's Max Duggan. And just to see his fight throughout the whole year and his story, wouldn't it be a great storybook finish?
I would love Max Duggan to win. I think I'm a little torn too, because I would love to see Max Duggan win a playoff game, beat Michigan, whatever. The only sad thing with that is I don't think TCU stands a chance of beating Georgia. And not that they necessarily stand a chance against Michigan either in my head. I think they could put up a pretty good fight for it. But definitely when it comes down to playing Georgia in the championship, TCU I don't think they could pull that off. I think Michigan has a shot. I think Michigan might upset Georgia in that game. So I'm torn both ways. I'll be satisfied either way that this game pans out.
Yeah, no, going back to, like, you don't think TCU can compare to Georgia, I agree. The physicality's there with Georgia. I think they can, you know, make a couple of plays against Michigan and maybe pull off the upset because, like, Michigan's skill players aren't as great as... I think TCU has better skill players at, like, receiver positions, maybe not running back because I know Blake Corum's going to be back for this game. But I think TCU, at least at receivers, and I think they have a better quarterback in Max Duggan. So, like, defense is a touch-and-go subject for both of these teams. But the thing that really sticks out that can compare to Georgia is I think Michigan's offensive line is the best offensive line in the country.
And 100%. And when you're pairing that with a running back like Blake Corum, that's a game changer.
And, yeah, for sure. And, like, this is the other thing. If we're talking about Georgia, because I got a feeling Georgia's going to be in the national championship game, I want to see that offensive line from Michigan face the best defensive front in Georgia. Because then it's your best five guys versus our best five guys. Let's see who can beat. So, like, definitely. I really like that.
And you're talking about, like, the skill players a little bit being good, but yeah, that's often said. Games are won in the trenches. It's the line. It's O-line, D-line. Like, those are what can make or break games. Because I don't care who your running back is. I don't care who your quarterback is, who your receivers are. If your line doesn't give the quarterback time, give the running back holes, or anything like that, you're not winning games. It all starts with a good, solid five up front. And so, since we're talking about Georgia a little bit already anyway, I'll give you the deets on that. But Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, Georgia versus Ohio State. That's happening in Atlanta, Georgia. Good for them. Also on New Year's Eve at 7 p.m. So this game is going to be after the Fiesta Bowl. So, yeah, thoughts? I know you've given them a little bit. I think Georgia wins.
I think Georgia wins, but how cool would it be to be a Big Ten championship or Big Ten national championship game? That would be cool. Like
it would be interesting, especially with as a rivalry as big as Ohio State versus Michigan is, and how kind of back and forth it's been the past couple seasons. Because I forget exactly what happened last season, but it's Michigan beat Ohio State in the regular season. Then Ohio State beat Michigan when it came to playoff time. Regular season, once again, Michigan won it. So if we had that pair up again on a national level, it would almost be the exact same as last year, how we had the rematch of Georgia-Bama in the championship. This year, we could have a rematch Michigan-Ohio State.
Right. Who do you think would take that game?
Michigan.
Michigan? What does Ohio State or even TCU have to do? Like, what are the key factors TCU would have to do to beat Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl? What do you think?
Obviously, TCU has to contain the run. They have to stop Blake Corum for popping off for like 150 yards. I mean, offensively, I think they're in good position. I think offensively they can hang just fine with Michigan's defense. I don't think they'll have too much of an issue. Max Duggan, he's kind of a playmaker. He works hard. He'll definitely make some things happen for him. I think it all comes down to, like you said, can they handle Michigan's offensive line? Can they stop Blake Corum from running all over them? Can they get enough pressure on the quarterback to disrupt that Michigan offense?
Yeah, and that's kind of how Michigan's been winning games all year, is that offensive line and that run game led by Blake Corum. I think one thing TCU would have to do is they haven't been good at this all year. They can't get down early. They can't get down big early because TCU have been known as like the comeback kids this year. And if you get down by Michigan early, they're going to run the ball, they're going to play possession football, and the game's going to be over in the blink of an eye. So, like,
if you're talking college football playoffs in jet, you have no room to lose. If you are in the playoffs, I don't care who you are, you can't get down. The minute you get down, getting a comeback, good luck. Like, you want to lead. It's almost arguably whichever team can get an early enough lead and hold on to that lead, they're going to take it. Like, any one of these four teams could win it all. As long as they could get a decent lead and just hold on to it, that's half the battle.
Yeah, for sure. And then Ohio State, what do they have to do to beat Georgia? I don't think they can beat Georgia. They're outcoached.
I don't know if they do. I haven't watched a ton of Ohio State, obviously, this year. I don't even know. I don't even necessarily like that they made the playoffs again. I was kind of hoping it'd be USC or just somebody, give us a little bit of a mix-up in there. But I don't know. I really haven't watched Georgia or Ohio State a whole ton, so I really don't know how that's going to go. I mean, obviously, I think Georgia takes it. I think from what I've heard, Georgia's undefeated, right? Like, Georgia hasn't lost a single game.
Yeah.
Ohio State only has one loss, right?
One loss to Michigan.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess it's a little bit of a toss-up. I guess it'll come down to who's healthier, who wants it more, who can make the most plays. But I don't know if Ohio State stands much of a chance.
I think one thing for Ohio State is that one game for Georgia, actually, that sticks in my head is they almost lost to Mizzou, in the middle of the year, and they just looked completely off. Stetson Bennett threw two picks, and he just, they couldn't get the ball moving, and Missouri was having a good chance, running the ball. And so I feel like if Ohio State can solidify a ground game early, I think we got it. Ohio State has a good shot. I definitely would take Ohio State over Georgia, as a fan aspect. I'm not an Ohio State fan, but I don't like the SEC. I'm a Big Ten through and through. I don't like the SEC. So I don't want the Bulldogs to pull it off.
That's fair. And I think that's why I'm real big on Michigan overtaking Georgia. I think Michigan has a shot in that final game. I think Michigan could do it. I think they can upset Georgia. I think we could have a Big Ten champion. And that's why I am so passionate about that, is because, yes, I feel the same way. I don't hate Big 12 or Pac-12 or ACC, but SEC fans are just so annoying. And that's the only reason I hate the SEC. I just hate the SEC because of the way the fans are. Just, we're the best, we're whatever, blah, blah, blah. Just shut up. You're not the best. Maybe if you're a Georgia or Alabama fan, you have a little more room to talk. But when other SEC people are coming in it's the SEC. Yeah, and you're the worst fucking team in the SEC. So, step down. So annoying.
Yep, I agree 1,000%. And so I'm really excited. I'm hoping my ideal championship game would actually, I hate to say it, would be TCU versus Ohio State with TCU on top. Because if that happened, I know TCU can beat Ohio State.
Oh, yeah.
I think TCU lines up very well and favorable with Ohio State, and because I want TCU to win, and so like I think that would be amazing. What I think's gonna happen is it'll be Michigan versus Georgia, and let's go Wolverines. Like I'm a big Michigan fan right now, so we're the Iowa Wolverines with like all our transfers that we've gotten so far. So we might as well cheer for Michigan.
We got a little room to be supporting Michigan. We got a few guys coming in for ourselves, but no, yeah, I definitely preferred. I wouldn't hate TCU versus Ohio State. I mean, TCU to win it all would be my absolute like dream. Realistically, I think Michigan is more of where my support lies with some realism. Georgia has a pretty good shot at winning it all again, though, I will say. I think Georgia has the easiest chance of establishing their game early and sustaining it. But that, like we said, that's all it comes down to. You got to establish your game early, and you just got to sustain for 4 quarters.
Yeah.
And so both these games are happening New Year's Eve, and I know it's not a playoff game, but just to talk about to throw in on the day of events, Iowa plays Kentucky at 11 a.m. on New Year's Eve. So it'll be a full day of football. I'll be watching the Music City Bowl, I'll be watching the Fiesta Bowl, and then I'll be watching the Peach Bowl. So it's just going to be a football day. Hope no one has any plans.
For sure. And you know what? Iowa versus Kentucky, I just want to see us beat them because like they beat us in heartbreaking fashion last year. We don't have a quarterback, and we talked about this last episode. Joe Labus will be starting. So,
and one thing I forgot to mention too last episode with the whole like, oh, we're just gonna have a bunch of or 2 teams with a bunch of players who didn't play all season because all the actual starters sat out. It just throws me back to that point of like, I don't enjoy bowl games. I want a playoff bracket. I want playoff championships. I don't want bowl. Everyone always consoles you with the, hey, at least you made a bowl. Like, cool. And what's the point? Like, half the starters aren't even playing. The game has no implications for anything. Like, why? Why bother? I hate bowls.
And you know what? We don't have to wait that much longer. 2024, the 12-team playoffs are coming to FBS college football, which I'm very excited for. I mean, I was kind of past, I think, their prime of being the 12 best teams in the country. I wish it would have came about 4 years ago because we've been right up there. I mean, we might not have been in, but we would at least have content to talk about with Iowa. And so, like, but at the same time, I'm excited. I want to see, like we talked about the FCS, I want to see a 7th seed playing in the semifinals.
Yeah, because they can pull it off. Like, that's 2 upsets right there. Like, UIW had to pull off 2 upsets to make it that far. So it's like, it happens. Look at the March Madness brackets. Like, you get upset. The way the 4-team playoff ranking stuff, the way we do it now, you hardly get any room for upsets. And,
for sure.
You know, there's some other teams that definitely deserve to take their shot and go make some things happen.
Yeah, and I wanted to, this is kind of besides the point, but it's related to college football. I want to do a rest in peace to Mike Leach, Mississippi State's head coach. He was a very big innovator of college football. He created the air raid, and he made every place better that he coached at. And he was just an awesome guy. I don't know if I never met him personally, but like if you ever heard any of his press conferences, he is hilarious, and he did a lot for college football. And so, like, you know, let's say a moment of silence right here, about 10 seconds, and yeah. All right. But yeah, Mike Leach, the pirate, as he went by.
Alrighty, so on that note, we'll get things shifted away from college a little bit, and we'll start getting into our NFL picture. Obviously, the NFL playoffs are a little bit further out still. We got 4 games left till things are solidified. We'll start with going off of the AFC. We'll do this by conference a little bit. So I'll break it down the way things stand currently. Nobody has clinched it in the AFC. There's no guaranteed to make a playoffs yet. But the current divisional leaders are the Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, and Titans. Our 3 wild cards are the Bengals, Dolphins, and Patriots. And everybody else basically has a shot still outside of the Broncos and the Texans. So, oh my. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts in the AFC right now?
It's definitely up in the air. A lot is up in the air. Big matchup this weekend is, I think the Bills play Miami, right?
They play Miami again?
They play Miami, and they lost to Miami on that kind of fluke game.
Yeah.
So I think if the Bills can beat Miami this week, I think they might solidify that shot because they play Chicago the week after. Yeah. And so I think that 2 wins will solidify the number 1 seed. So the AFC probably will run through Buffalo for once again. So but these right here, the only change I really see is in the AFC North. I think with Lamar being out, I think the Bengals will overtake that division lead, and they will be the representatives of the AFC South once again. Titans, don't sleep on the Jaguars. They're on a 2-game win streak, and they're still in the hunt. They're still sniffing around, so that's exciting. But
that's the biggest one too. So, with the Bills and the Dolphins, it is a big game, but it's also to some degree not a huge game because it could help shift those divisional leaders, sure, but both teams Dolphins are 8-5, Bills are 10-3, so even if the Bills lost to the Dolphins, Bills are going to make that wild card round. The way things stand right now, the way things are going, Bills they'll be in the playoffs. They might not be that first seed, but they will definitely play in the wild cards. They'll probably win their wild card game should they have one. So I think it's pretty certain that they're going to be there.
Yeah, no, I think the Bengals will be there, and I think the Bills will definitely. I think the Bills will be there one way or another. I really hope. To be honest, I want to see the Bills be the number 1 seed again. I love watching playoff games in Buffalo.
I thought the Bills were going to be champions, or at least competing in the Super Bowl all year. Just the way things went last year, I think they got screwed with the overtime rules, obviously. I think Bills 100% are the best team in the AFC, and I think they're going. I think they make it.
What do you think of Josh Allen's kind of up and down year? Kind of a roller coaster year.
Yeah, I don't know if they've been as great as last year. I feel like last year they looked a lot cleaner. They were a lot more obviously deserved to be there and in it. This year they have dropped a few games, and it's been a little wishy-washy here and there with them, but I think they still pull it off. Obviously, their hardest bets are going to be the Dolphins again. The Chiefs is always going to be a tough game, and the Bengals may or may not give them a run for their money as they've started to pick things up lately too. But outside of that, I think they easily pull out a win against everyone else. I think they have a good shot at beating those 3 in the first place as well. It'll just be harder competition for them. So
for sure, yeah. And the Bills, they've been a pretty consistent team so far in the AFC. The team that nobody has to worry about is Kansas City. Kansas City, they're slow and steady. They win the race. They have the best quarterback in the league, and Patrick Mahomes, and their defense has stepped up tremendously. The one thing I would say, maybe not much of a run game with Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde Edwards. It's not there. Sprinkle in a little Jerick McKinnon. But I don't know. I think the Chiefs, they are the Patriots of old. They're always going to be there. They are the New England Patriots. And so, yeah, I think Chiefs, we don't have to really talk much because they're the Chiefs.
Yeah, they'll be in it. They're also 10-3, so they're one of those teams that for them to be out of the playoffs entirely, no one has it clenched. But the Bills and the Chiefs at 10-3 would have to lose all 4 games with a few other teams winning out. So the odds of all that happening, very, very low. The next 2 teams that are pretty decently solidified, the Ravens are 9-4, as well as the Bengals. So 9-4, a lot of things got to go wrong for you guys to be kicked out at that point. So I think they stand a pretty good chance. Whether they're divisional leaders or playing in the wild card round, that's a toss-up. But
so, I was just going to mention the Bengals. They have a pretty tough schedule coming up. They play the Bucs, which they'll win that pretty easily. Tampa looks pretty bad.
The way Tom Brady looked against the 49ers last week, yeah, I wouldn't worry. If I were anybody, I wouldn't worry too much about the Bucs right now.
For sure. And then they play the Patriots, which, I think they'll pull that off. It's pretty easy. But their last 2 games of the year that will solidify if they're AFC North champs probably is going to be the Bills versus the Bengals in the regular season, and the Ravens versus the Bengals, and that will probably be for the division. Because if I look at here, the Ravens' schedule for the next upcoming games will be... Sorry, it's being weird. But yeah, I think that will be for the division, definitely. They play the Browns, which I think that will be a win. The Falcons, the Steelers. So, yeah, the Bengals will not, because I think they'll lose to the Bills. I think the Bengals will lose to the Bills in the regular season, but the Bengals, they'll be a game behind. And if they beat the Ravens last game of the year, it'll be for the division. Definitely. So
I think all the teams at the beginning of this list are in it. The questionable ones, Dolphins and Patriots, are kind of floating right there. Dolphins at 8-5, and then the Patriots at 7-6. The Patriots really have to watch themselves because the Chargers and the Jets are both also at 7-6. So the Patriots, they've got no room for error. They've got to win out. And if they don't win out, they got to hope the Chargers and the Jets drop another games themselves. They're the ones that are on a little bit of thin ice, just barely squeaking by.
For sure. No, I agree. I think the Dolphins, they're going to be solidified. I think you can count them being in the playoffs. Whether they're the 6th seed or the 7th seed, I think they'll be in. The Patriots, I think they'll fall out.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know who they play exactly, but it's the Patriots. They're not a great team. They're going to fall out.
The Patriots, they play the Raiders, the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Bills. They're going to fall out.
They're going to fall. Yeah,
they're going to fall.
The 3 at the end there, the Bengals, Dolphins, and Bills, they lose. I guarantee they lose at least 2 of those 3, if not all 3 of them. They're definitely going to be bumped out. I think the Chargers deserve that spot more anyway. I like the Chargers a little bit more.
This is the other thing I was going to say. I just brought up the Chargers' schedule, and I think the Chargers will replace them. They play the Titans, the Colts, the Rams, and the Broncos. I think the Chargers will solidify that last playoff spot, maybe even the 6th seed, because Miami has a rough little bit going for their last couple of games too. So, but I don't see the Jets making it this year. Too much inconsistency. They're starting Zach Wilson again this week.
Are they?
Because Mike White's hurt.
So
they have to start Zach Wilson again. So that's going to be a rough game for them.
Who are they playing?
The Jets, they play the Jets play the Lions this week.
Oh, okay. The Lions have been looking good, so
yes.
That'll be tough.
I think the Lions will pull that one out. But yeah, I think by the end of the year, I think we're looking at the Chargers in the playoffs because I don't see any of the. I would have said maybe the Raiders if they wouldn't have lost to Baker Mayfield and the Rams last week, because they would have had a 6-7. That would have been a 4-game win streak. But the Raiders, I think they're just as dead in the water as the other teams.
Everybody else is 5-8 outside of the Colts, who are 4-8-1. So yeah, definitely everybody else. They basically have to win out, and hope for losses above them. So it's a tough look for all of them. I think we get the Chargers in that last wild card spot, or maybe not last wild card spot, but I think they clinch wild card along with the Dolphins, and everyone else stands true. They're going to be in it
for sure.
But to shift gears over to the NFC a little bit, the NFC does have one clinched playoff team, the Eagles, if there was any question about that. 12-1, they're definitely going to be in it. Doesn't matter. They're still competing for that first round bye, so they're still going to be playing. I know we talked about against the Bears this week. Like, are they for sure or not?
They're about 12-2. Just to let everybody know, they are going to be 12-2 after this week. The Chicago Bears are going to beat the Eagles. Oh, keep going. I'm sorry.
Regardless, so they have clenched playoffs. Not the first seed. They'll still be competing for first seed, so they're still going to try their best against the Bears, ultimately leading in most likely victory. But they are in the playoffs for sure.
For sure.
Outside of that, the other divisional winners right now are the Vikings, believe it or not, who we'll definitely talk about that a little bit. The 49ers, led by our boy Brock Purdy. Let's go. Sadly, the Bucks, and I say sadly because they are the only team in the playoffs right now with a losing record. That's right, they're 6-7, but they are currently leading that shitty division, so there they are. 3 wild cards. We got the Cowboys, the Commanders, and the Giants. Everybody else still has a shot except for yours truly, the Bears, sadly, are the only ones who are definitely out. So,
isn't that embarrassing?
A little bit. I mean, on the AFC side, you have the Broncos and the Texans, who are just as bad. Texans are 1-11-1, and the Broncos are 3-10, just like us. I guess I kind of rest assured with, like we were talking about last week, we have 10 losses, but 7 of them were by 1 score. So next year, just next year.
Next year. The cool thing about this right now is the playoffs stand. All 4 NFC East teams are in the playoffs. If the season ended today, all NFC East teams are in the playoffs.
And all NFC South teams, I mean, one of them has to be in. Someone has to win that division. But big yikes. They're going to get gone first round.
It's rough. So I want to talk about actually the NFC East a little bit with this. The Cowboys and the Eagles, right? Who's going to win that division? Because the Cowboys are 10-3, Eagles are 12-1. If the Eagles drop 2 games out of their last, they play the Bears, the Cowboys, the Saints, the Giants. If I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be the biggest Bears fan this weekend, because out of those teams, probably the Giants and the Cowboys have the best shot, but I think the Bears are that frisky underdog that they could look at. Like, that's why I keep saying that we are going to beat Philly, because I think they're overlooking us, because they're looking towards Dallas the following week. And so if I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be on Justin Fields, like, let's go, come on now, we got this. Because, like, if the Eagles drop this, they're going to be 12-2. Dallas wins, they're going to be 11-3. And then Dallas beats Philly, they're both 12-3. So, like, that's what I'm saying with this. It's pretty exciting. The NFC East, what's your thoughts on the NFC East?
Yeah, I mean, Cowboys have been a fairly consistent team. They've been looking pretty good. They've dropped a few games. The way they've dropped them, I'm not 100%. Like, I think they're a little bit hit or miss sometimes. I still don't know if they have that true consistency factor. But, I mean, yeah, they may be the biggest Bears fan right now and whatnot. The Bears might be a little bit of an I'm sorry. The Eagles overlooking the Bears are not. they're gonna. We talked about this plenty last week, so we're moving on from it after this. But the Eagles have a powerhouse offense, and the Bears have a rookie secondary. Not a rookie player in the secondary. I'm talking all 4 spots are fucking rookie, like non-starters. So it's not happening. I don't care if the Cowboys are rooting from them. I don't care if the Eagles are overlooking them. The Eagles are the best team in the league right now as it stands. The Eagles are just an absolute powerhouse. They're rolling with it. I think they do win the division against the Cowboys. The Eagles-Cowboys game will definitely be one to watch. I think it'll be great. If there is anyone that's going to have some luck against that Eagles offense, it's going to be Micah Parsons. I know he's going to be out there. He's going to be doing everything he can, and I think he just stands a good shot at it. With that being said, I do think Dallas comes up a little short still against them. The Eagles are just... They're dangerous. They're just too dangerous right now. I don't care what you do against them. I don't think Dallas's offense will be able to keep pace with what the Eagles' offense is going to be able to do.
For sure. So that's your pick. Eagles going to win the NFC East?
I think so. I think they win the NFC East. Even if they beat Dallas, like I said, even if they beat Dallas, they're still going to win the rest of their games, I believe, and Dallas is still going to come up short record-wise in the end.
For sure. Let's talk about the NFC South, because the Bucs, like you said, awful. 6-7 in the play.
Only losing record in the playoffs right now, which is just...
Well, I want to talk about one team that has climbed up from the dead. Because, one, they released their starting quarterback that was their quarterback in the beginning of the year. They traded away their all-star running back that's been there forever. They fired their head coach, which is the head coach at Nebraska now, the Carolina Panthers. They started the year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They were 5. They were 2-5. They were dead in the water. 2-5. And they've had a very inconsistent year, a couple of win streaks, a couple of lose streaks. But right now they're sitting at a 4-8 record, or 5-8 record, and very, very, very real possibility that they will win the NFC South.
That would be huge. For a second, when you mentioned them, I was like looking down. I was like, okay, where are they at? They're among the 5-8 teams. No, too many things have to go right. But yeah, you got to remember that NFC South spot, 5-8. The current team winning it is 6-7. You're only one game away.
Yeah, no, and they play the Steelers, Detroit, Tampa Bay, and New Orleans. I think the only game they lose is Detroit.
Yeah.
Detroit. So, and they had a huge win against Seattle last week. So I really think the Carolina Panthers, led by Sam Darnold, of all people, everybody gave up on Sam Darnold. Everybody gave up on this team. And I think they're going to win. I think they're going to be in the NFC South. They're going to be in the playoffs. Which, do they deserve to be in the playoffs? Absolutely not.
No. Okay, well, first of all, nobody in the NFC South deserves to be in the playoff. Yeah, like I said, someone's obviously going to have to win the division and make it there. But they're also getting booted out in the very first wild card round. Like, I don't care who wins it. The NFC South is just, they're not even in the conversation right now. Like, there's just no question. It doesn't matter who wins the division. Yay, they made the playoffs. Great, now go lose. That's all that's going to happen. It's whatever to me.
For sure. Do you think the Giants and the Commanders will stay up that 6-7 spot?
That's a super interesting one because both teams are 7-5-1. So the only thing that's kind of holding them there against like the Seahawks or the Lions, who were both, Seahawks were 7-6, but Thursday happened, and then 6-7. The only thing that was holding off the Seahawks from being above these two was the fact that they tied a game, and they had technically a half a game less of a loss. So yeah. I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought that was like a big, like, oh man, those three teams right there, there's a lot that could happen with them shuffling around. And this wild card is a lot less set than in the AFC. The AFC was pretty, the wild cards were there. There was one spot that could maybe be clinched by somebody else or not. I think in the NFC here, we got two spots that could really fluctuate, and there's a few teams that could pop in there. I think the Lions and the Seahawks both have a decent chance of swiping those spots from them.
So yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The Detroit Lions are sitting at 6-7 after a 1-5 start. They're 5-1 in the last 6 games, and their schedule, end of the year schedule, is very, very favorable. They play the Jets that are going back to Zach Wilson, which I think they'll win this week. They play Carolina, which we mentioned, a little bit of dumpster vibe. Maybe Carolina pulls it up. And then they play Chicago, which I think Detroit beats us again. I hate to say it, but I think Detroit beats us again. And
That's
then
a good shot they do. I think a big part of it comes down to who we have healthy by that point. But also there could be a degree of that point of, I don't think Eberflus is going to play anybody if they're still teetering the fence, because this season is a wash. We are definitely out. There's no chance of getting in. I think even if you get a couple guys that are like, hey, we could play Sunday, I think you just say, guys, it's not worth it. Go sit. Let's just let them take this. I don't know if they have a big heart to play upset right now. I think they'd rather think ahead to the draft, just let the season be what it is, and continue on trying to keep their best players out and healthy. If anything, I think we put up the best fight against the Lions. Carolina,
they play Green Bay too, so maybe Green Bay play spoiler at the end of the year, last game of the year. Because I know the Lions have done that with Green Bay a lot of years. I know the Lions have really affected their playoff seeding in the past, last game of the year. A couple of years ago, I know they did that with Rodgers. And so, I could see Green Bay, giving that back to the Detroit Lions. Being like, oh, for all this playing spoiler in the past, here you go. But yeah, I think the Lions could easily go 4-0. And I think the Lions could be sitting at a 10-7 record.
I think the Lions are definitely picking up. It's similar to how we always talk about Iowa. They develop throughout the season. They never start super hot, but they start making gains by the end of the year. The Lions have looked like that this year. They maybe didn't start the hottest. They didn't start horrible, but, they were still a pretty meh team. But like you said, 5-1 in the last 6 games, they're looking to make their claims now. They're on a roll, and I think they keep rolling, and I think they might clinch one of those latter spots in the wild cards.
I agree. One thing that I want to touch base on before we get to the last playoff spot is the 49ers. I know we kind of just brushed over it. Brock Purdy, an incredible game, major divisional game, because this is what, won the NFC West for the 49ers. A lot of compoise, a lot of composure out there. He looked really sharp.
This really solidified Purdy. Everyone was like, oh, against the Bucks, whatever, kind of, it's the 49. But yeah, like you said, playing away, playing a divisional game, a game with actual super high implications, he is a starting NFL quarterback. He is. He should be there. He deserves that spot.
It'll be really interesting in the offseason what the 49ers decide to do. I know they haven't handled quarterback situations well in the past, especially with our boy Jimmy G. I know we've been talking a lot about Brock Purdy, but I know a couple weeks ago we were praising Jimmy G. And
and you don't have to make them. Yes, they're on the same team, but I can still like both quarterbacks. Just because we're talking up Brock Purdy doesn't mean we're saying anything against Jimmy G whatsoever. I still love Jimmy G. I think Jimmy G's the guy, but Brock Purdy is also the guy, just the younger guy.
Yeah, it's hard when you have two guys. And I love how nobody talks about Trey Lance. they spent a first-round pick on this guy, and he can't stay healthy to stay on the field. He can't be on the field, and like he's getting outperformed. First rounder, seventh rounder, and Brock's showing out. He's showing out. That's what I love about this. Like you said, I think Brock and Jimmy are a guy, and I think Jimmy will just be a guy for a different team next year. I think they'll make a hard decision in the offseason whether they're going to go with Brock Purdy or Trey Lance. I think it might be a quarterback battle in the offseason and in training camp, but I think Brock's competitiveness might win it out for them, especially if the 49ers go far in the playoffs.
I think Brock definitely has good ground to stake his claim. I think in a quarterback battle, I think he will do pretty well. He's looked great. He's only played a couple games starting and everything, obviously, but he's looked great. You know, like he's played really, really well. And like you said, I think the 49ers do have room to go pretty far into this playoffs because, I mean, look at their competition. The only other real competition they'd have, obviously the Eagles are going to put up a big fight for it. The Cowboys are probably going to be a tough team to beat. But outside of that, who do you have? The Vikings? Which that's one team I want to talk about right now. The Vikings, 10-3. Are the Vikings a 10-3 team?
No, they are the Chicago Bears if we had luck go our way.
Yeah. Like in all of our one-score games, like you said last week, if they would have been flipped, we'd have been 10-3.
We would have been 10-3. We are the Minnesota Vikings. We could be there. And so, like, Minnesota's just gotten super lucky. I'm looking at this right now. 22-27, 26-33.
And that's the big thing. Look, I know I've seen this on Instagram a little bit and whatnot, but look at the point differential. The Minnesota Vikings are the only team in the playoff, either in the playoffs or winning their conference. I forget which it is. But they're the only team with success right now that has a negative point differential. Like, you look at the Bills and the Chiefs and the Eagles, like all their point differentials, and they're all like double digits in the positive. Minnesota has a -1 point differential. Yet somehow they are 10-3.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's insane. And, you know, you can say a lot of that was the 40-3 blowout by the Dallas Cowboys that affected the point differential, of course. But Minnesota's not even the best team in the NFC North. No. I think, to be honest, and people are going to say I'm freaking crazy, but I think the Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFC North. And to go show, like,
from right now, the Detroit Lions, I 100% agree with you. The Lions look good. They are playing well. I honestly am a little proud of them.
And Jared Goff resurged his career. Jared Goff, people gave up on Jared Goff. They're like, trade him to Detroit. We don't want him. We want Matt Stafford. And it worked out for the Rams for 1 year.
For sure. Well, and that's the big thing, too. With how well it worked out for the Rams, like Matthew Stafford leaves Detroit, goes to the Rams, and goes and wins a Super Bowl. That was just a big middle finger to Jared Goff almost. Every Lions fan out there is like, oh, see, he is a great quarterback. Our team just sucks.
And then now here the Lions come. Jared Goff playing great football. Dan Campbell, great coach. Their offense is amazing. And they kicked Minnesota in the mouth last week, by the way. 34-23. 34, and it wasn't even close. No,
it wasn't. And so that's where you're coming from. Like, people might say you sound crazy. The Lions are the best in the NFC. But, I mean, shit. The Vikings are there right now, and we just watched the Lions dominate the Vikings. So, yeah, I don't think it's crazy at all.
And like this kind of goes back to the last two playoff seeds. That's why I think Detroit will get a playoff spot, and I think Seattle will sneak in. I think the Commanders and the Giants will actually fall out. I hate to say it, I like Taylor Heineke.
And the Giants, I 100% agree. I think the Giants fall out. Commanders?
It's up there because their defense is good. Like, the Commanders' defense is pretty solid. So, like, I think the Lions will solidify because if they go even 3-1, I think they'll get a playoff spot. Because that will put them at, 9-8? I think 9-8 will get you a playoff spot this year.
It will.
And Seattle, they have a tough road ahead, but I think they could pull it off. But the Commanders, they have an even tougher road ahead. The Commanders, they do have... Well, Seattle, they play Kansas City next week.
Oof.
Play the Jets, and then the Rams always play Seattle tough, even if the Rams suck. And you got to forget Baker Mayfield's, he has all season to show what he's got to be a number one quarterback again. So, I mean, I could see the Rams playing spoiler with that and knocking them out. The Commanders, on the other hand, they have a tough schedule ahead. They play the Giants, the 49ers, Cleveland, and Dallas. Which Cleveland's no slump, but Deshaun's kind of knocked that team down. And I want to go on a run. I mean, I know we're done. This will be a 30-second rant. They were winning games with Jacoby Brissett. They're losing games with Deshaun Watson. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
We talked about this already. We talked about this before Deshaun even started, I think. Like, hey, why don't you just keep rocking with Brissett? Like, maybe you can alternate reps a little bit, kind of let them have a quarterback battle. Like, let them go through a little bit of a quarterback battle. But no, they straight up switched to Deshaun, and it's biting them in the butt right now.
And you know what? The Browns get what they deserve.
No, 100%.
They get what they deserve. They traded Baker Mayfield for Deshaun Watson. He's been terrible. Hasn't played in 2 years. And then you got a guy that the whole locker room likes that performs well for you, Jacoby Brissett, and you bench him for Deshaun.
And that's a huge factor that you just mentioned too. Outside of just on-field performance, skills, whatever, the locker room loves Jacoby. You need that support. You need guys that are willing to play and bust their ass for you, that see you as a leader. Because if the guys don't like you, I don't care how talented or skilled you are, they're not going to play their best for you. Whether they think they're trying to or not, they're just not going to do it.
Yeah, and then they play Dallas at the end of the year, and that will be tough too. So the Commanders, that's why I think they could easily go 2-2 in that stretch. And I don't know if 2-2, 9-8, I don't know if it will get, because the Lions beat Commanders beat the Lions, so they would own the tiebreaker over that. So it'll be interesting, man.
I think the Lions have a real good shot at it. The Giants definitely drop. And I think the Lions, if anything, take the Giants spot over the Seahawks. I don't know. The Seahawks, you said they play the Chiefs and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a toss-up. I do think the Lions are a good team. I think they deserve to be there. I think they might make it. But any last comments on our NFL playoff picture here?
Yeah, I just think the Bears are going to win the Super Bowl this year. I really do. Justin Fields will be MVP.
That is statistically impossible. So,
no, I have no last questions. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so that was our little playoff party. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you back next Friday for some regular episode content, going through the games that were played, blah, 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 whatever. College is going to be a little weird. We'll probably transition to a little bit more of a basketball look for college, considering we got a while till those bowl games start happening and whatnot. But until then, please like this video, give us 5 stars on Spotify, go subscribe to our YouTube, help out the pod. Avery, sign us off.
Beardown.